I'm recording. Okay, welcome everyone. We're in Bible study, trying to see if we can continue through the stay at home or shelter in place or whatever we're in. Welcome everybody. And I have this. I think you can see the Bible study notes on the screen if you're online, and if not, I have sent them out ahead of time for you to print off. So I kind of see there's two ways of doing Bible study. One is by starting with the scripture and then going to how it relates to life, or the other is to start with a what's going on in your life and see what scripture has to say about it. And so that's how I'm kind of making this set of Bible studies to talk about different items that seem to be very prevalent in our lives. And so the one that came to my mind is community. So there might be scriptures that you have in mind that you'd like to share, but it seems like we have a lot in our scriptures about how are we supposed to live with one another and be in community with one another. So the one that came to mind right away is do unto others as you would have them do you. And I think we probably have heard that one for many, many years as we were growing up. And the other one was Corinthians 12. If one part of the body suffers, then every part suffers. And so maybe that's what we can think about today as we're trying to live through this, through the pandemic crisis that we're in. So I've got the book of Joy that Vicki Salmon told me about, and I have appreciated it a lot. And there's a lot of really deep sharing about how they live in community together and how they survive in difficult times by being taking care of one another and being in making the world a better place, kinder and gentler. So Bishop Tutu calls this Ubuntu. I don't know if anybody's more familiar than I am can chime right in and talk about Ubuntu or what they know about it.
I've heard the word before. I've seen. A friend of mine has a newsletter by that name, so I just understand that it's about community, and the definition that's there is a really good definition of it. So yeah, so it keeps popping up more and more as folks consider community. That's all I know. Lyle and Vivian, I'm wondering if you know more about it. You lived in that world.
No, I'm not sure how that's spelled. It didn't sound quite right.
What?
But the Bluetooth, it sounded like to me. I did see on TV where somebody was having a group discussion like denomination-wide, and the two other countries if they wanted to be on it, and it seemed like that was the title of it. But I'm not sure we have the same word. How do you spell that?
Can you see it on your screen? It's in the third paragraph, Ubuntu.
Ubuntu. There's a computer language.
Oh.
No, it's a Linux language. Ubuntu. Very popular.
So the definition for those who don't have the screen, we are who we are through one another. Our humanity is bound up in one another. And so I was thinking, who in my life would come to mind, thinking about who helped shape me. And I wondered if you had any thoughts about that in your own thinking and contemplating on that.
Probably everybody we've met in church.
Right. And when did you start going to church, Vivian?
When I was a baby in arms.
Right. I can imagine they were looking forward to your entry into the world too as a baby in arms.
Well, a little brother in background, at my home church, they had two doors at the back, women on one side, men on the other. My mother and father sat together. I think they were one of the first couples to sit together. And then they had us children. We ended up 7 of us. We were fairly spread out, but they had to take care of us during church and the church service.
Yeah. Goodness, I don't know that many places where it was 2 different doors. I know of a church in Western Plains where that is the case. It's very old, probably the first one here, but to have separate doors for men and women is like, oh my goodness, that is not in my reality. But so anyway, just it's I don't know, it's a whole bunch of things.
Well,
But family is always the piece that has influenced me.
Oh, the brethren in Nigeria use one door, but they sit on different sides.
yeah. And my home church now has one door. They got rid of the 2 doors. Yeah. So
Yeah, I don't know what life was like before I was born, but I know that my parents were pastors, and people kept saying, haven't you had that baby yet? Haven't you had that baby yet? And so I guess they were ready to welcome me into the world. And I always thought that was one of the blessings that other people might not have ever had the benefit of. And I always felt that I was extra cared about because of that church family that kept paying attention to me, taught me Bible, taught Sunday school and all the things that, vacation Bible school, all the things that you get because people cared enough to do that.
right.
And all those relationships were, when I was growing up, also carried over, particularly when I was in high school, not so much in elementary school, but in high school, those relationships had a lot of following through connectedness. I think what I'm thinking of specifically is like my high school youth group and what that was like. So there was a lot of influence from there too.
Yeah, that's something that not everybody had a youth group, and I don't know if that made a difference in anybody's life. Besides Vicki, they could talk about that.
Well, I had a wonderful youth group when I was in youth. There were quite a few of us, and we had monthly meetings going from one home to the next. And the pastor would say, "What do you kids want to talk about? Try to get our interest," and then we'd study those things. And it was a lot of important studying that we did during those youth years.
Right.
So I'm fortunate. Didn't
When
you
I
have
was
Yeah, we had a nice big youth group.
in Denver?
when I was in Virginia, it was a big youth group, and I'm pretty sure we met weekly, besides for Sunday school. And it really became the social life that so much of my time revolved around. It was, where activities happened and places to go and things to do happened.
So blessings that you may not even realize till, like myself, and time later, looking backwards, it's like, wow, there were people who were shaping and making my life better that I didn't ever even say thank you to or know.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So did anybody look at the Desmond Tutu quote? Now scientists are discovering that our basic human nature is compassionate, not that we are born evil, but that we're born with the ability to be compassionate. the problem is that children go to school where they are not taught to nurture these deeper human values. So their basic human potential becomes dormant. And I was, Dave, you want to share about On Being that you got me to become aware of this link that I listened to this On Being show. Welcome, Dave.
And Paul and
Oh, Paul.
wow.
Galaxy Tab A. We don't know who you are. Welcome.
Oh, that's Kathy Bankert, I do believe.
Oh, nice. Welcome.
I think that's me.
I think it is.
Kathy, you are the galaxy. You are the moon and the stars. Way to go.
I'll go for that today.
Yeah.
I was muted, so maybe others are too.
I was as well, and I'll continue to mute, but I just wanted to say thank you for the welcome.
Oh, good.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm muted. Oh, hi everyone.
Yeah, well, there's a link there for an On Being, which is a podcast that's on every week and has all kinds of really interesting stuff. And this particular one that goes along with the Desmond Tutu quote. Not that there's not the potential to also have negative things in our human nature, but if you've ever heard of the idea of original sin, and which is like, and some say that we have no capacity for goodness within ourselves unless there's a change of nature. Well, not all Christians agree with that. And, this kind of research kind of says, yeah, there's kind of both. And of course, it's not just nature, it's nurture, who we grow up with and our families and all those kinds of things have an impact as well. But it's really interesting research for sure.
Right. And so I was listening to it, and it said that we have the ability to influence a lot of generations past us, not just the people around us, but our ability to make choices for goodness and kindness and compassion can then influence not only you, but the people around you and their friends and their friends and the friends of their friends and friends of their friends and friends of their friends. And that is like the exact opposite of coronavirus. How does coronavirus spread? By one person influencing the next and the next and the next, and it keeps going. And this research was saying that's exactly how this compassion can influence all the people that you would not even have control over. Otherwise, you have this ability to make the world a better place by how you choose to be loving and kind and to be compassionate. So that was kind of inspiring. I thought, wow, we could be. We're all in a situation now where we have to choose how we're going to make it through this time together. So, have you noticed any needs in your life for a community now that we have a coronavirus? Oh, Elizabeth,
I'm ready to go back to the office.
you're what?
Ready to go back to work, eh?
Yeah, I'd like to see some people.
What happened to all the people?
They're all working at home.
I mean, we just all of a sudden it's like the people in our lives just poof disappear.
Gone. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're gone.
Right.
Right. All my shows got canceled. All my theater shows, all my music stuff, all of my social dance groups, all that just like within a week out the window, And like my job is not like the happiest place on earth, but then they also kicked us out of DU. And then it was like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? Like, I'm such a social person. Like, I stared at every dog that passed by me on the trail today. And I was like, I love you. I love you. Do you know that I love you, dog? It was pretty pathetic.
Time to get a dog, evidently.
I know. I was like trying to see if anybody would let me foster an animal, but apparently all the fosters near me, like all the animal shelters around me, all their animals got adopted or fostered before this outbreak.
Huh.
Because they heard about it and knew that it was going to be a need.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, community, like, thank you for stepping up, but also I'm lonely. Darn it.
Yeah. Oh, that's really funny.
But
So
Rochelle posted something about that. I don't know if she has any connections. that there was a need. That was a couple days ago. Maybe it all got taken care of.
Wow.
Maybe my landlord doesn't want me to have a cat, so I'd have to have a dog, and I'm not really a dog person, but I don't know. I'd foster like a little old one.
Elizabeth Ann, I will go out in my garden and I will find a ladybug for you. And I will give
Thank
you a
you.
ladybug. Or go find your
Ladybug. What I
own.
really want, I want to adopt a whole bunch of rats because I've had those before. I've raised 13 of them. But my landlord looked at me sideways, and I didn't really want to mess with that.
Yeah. That might be beyond the pale. I know there is a rat problem in Littleton, so they probably aren't that eager to have more rats.
Oh my gosh, I could go find my own friends, just like Vicky said.
Right, exactly. So all of a sudden, life looks like we noticed that you can't survive without other people, and it's been like really a wake-up call for me. I've noticed a lot of dads interacting with their children outdoors. It's like, well, that's a new thought. They're playing catch or like, with 2-year-olds or throwing rocks in the river today, and all kinds of little stuff with adults and kids getting together. So what has gone missing in your life other than the people? What are you noticing that's really kind of barren in your life?
I think this is Paul. Neil stopped by with his girlfriend, Kelsey, and talk about confusing with our daughter named Kelsey and his girlfriend, Kelsey. It's interesting. But yeah, Kelsey is a burn nurse at Denver General, and they are preparing to separate the 2 of the 3 rooms that they have for burn victims for the COVID victims. And the nurses and doctors are relegated to using only 1 mask for a 12-hour shift. So that's really pretty bad right there. So I think, as far as what we're missing protective care for the people that are caring for us. And that's just a little bit scary. So
My dad is a tailor, and he's actually been making masks left and right, most of them to match his bowling shirts that he makes. They thought that'd be funny, but they do. 4 of my friend Kathy and her mom and dad and her brother, they all caught the virus, and so my dad made them masks because they live in New York and they can't be found for love or money. So
Wow.
sewed up a whole bunch today and was like, send them away to Kathy's family. And then a whole bunch of other people saw my post. So like, I have friends who are nurses who message me on Facebook, and they're like, hey, can your dad make me some? Can I buy some from him? And I'm like, oh God, what did I do? What did I do? What did I do? What did I do?
Wow.
Well, I haven't verified this, but I heard today that dormitories at CU are being readied, as for quarantine spaces. And, in case things get really, really bad. And I think, one of the things that, those of us that can or are able to, at some point we may have to be caregivers of sorts, trying to figure out how to stay safe. But if it really gets bad, I'm thinking dorms at CU, 10 or 20,000 folks. That's pretty crazy if that would happen.
Wow. So
it's almost sure to happen in the sense that we're on a higher arc than Italy was.
Right.
And not slowing down. And yeah, it's already doubled when it started here 4 days ago. The report was that 20 people had died in Denver, and now it's several hundred, and doubling and multiplying daily. So yeah, it could get very, very, very bad.
And that's just terrifying what's happening in Italy right now. Because what they're doing with the ventilators is essentially holding death panels the way they used to do with dialysis back in the 70s.
Right.
You know, they're like, okay, 2 patients need this ventilator. One person is this age, one person's that age, but this person has kids and that person is like a community mentor. So who would do the most impact if we save them? It's like, this shouldn't be the way that is. That's terrifying.
That is terrible. So Ellen Anderson is 91, and she was saying her daughter made masks for her granddaughter who's a nurse in Denver, and they wouldn't accept the mask, like, cloth ones with. So I heard that the Mennonite women were making masks, and Barb Rohr sent me a link of instructions for how to make masks. And so if that's something, if we could send them to New York and if they would take them, I think we could help out anybody who needs masks.
Yeah, my friends aren't working in the hospital system. They wanted them in case they have to go out. But my friend in New Jersey was the nurse who asked for the cloth masks, and in 2 weeks, her hospital is going to make that decision. What I've seen so far is that anybody using a cloth mask is using it over their current N95 to extend the life of the mask.
Right.
Because they're precious material. But if I hear any more back from her, like, I'll let her know. Like, my dad made his masks, like, as a joke, and he's got a lot of other stuff to do. So he wasn't prepared to just turn around and make masks for everybody. So if there is a community out here that is able to make them, then, I'll let her know that there are people.
I'll see if I can send the email instructions or the link to the instructions to the church, to the announcement that sent out this Bible study. So anybody who wants that, they can have that link to how to make masks. And I saw it on TV. They were having hospitals making the mask to extend the life of the
N95.
N95.
Yeah, I also heard that Joann's, like, if you let them know, like, they have pre-packaged cutouts for masks. I've also heard that if you have any sewing capability, you call Joann's and you let them know you're coming ahead of time, and they'll actually just give you a pack and just, like, come out and meet you at your car for free.
Oh, interesting. Cool. Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. So there's this high risk now. Everybody is separated, and I don't know, do you notice there's more fear when you pass somebody on the sidewalk? It's like, there's this separation anxiety of, this person might be infected. And so we have that whole new kind of fear that's out there in the world. Are you going to infect me? Are you the carrier? Anybody notice that kind of new sensation?
Actually, I noticed the opposite. I just find people more friendly.
Right.
People go out of their way to say hi. We cross the street, we make big spaces between us, but they're children with strollers or walking their dogs or just, jogging, and people are just friendlier, it seems to me. And I think
Everyone
it's
is
this.
so nice.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more people outside. That's what I noticed.
I
So
notice, like, everybody talks to me and everybody waves at me, like people that I've never talked to before in my little development here. But like the tow guy, the post office dude, like the postal worker, my next door neighbor, my other next door neighbor, people that, like, won't even talk to me when they get their mail are suddenly, like, desperate for human connection.
oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, that kind of leads us to this paragraph on the bottom of the first page. If you're feeling frustrated and stressed out, or you're not alone, the quote from Peter Stanke is a systems theory church person, and he says, to be separate and to be close are basic needs. One is personal, the other relational. A major task of our life is to be able to shift from one to the other with some degree of balance between the two. And what I'm noticing is that we really are having a hard time because we don't have our social dance club to go to. We don't have our movie theater. We don't have anywhere to gather and to greet, to connect up with our friends in a restaurant setting. And so all of a sudden we're trying to figure out how to do this together apart. And now that and then the other part is we're thrown into a house where there might be too many people trying to live together and they can't find any way to separate. So how do we figure this out when we're trying to get through this time together? Anybody notice that they're lacking this balance in their life?
Well, I made the decision about a year ago that I wanted to live alone because I thought that'd be like really great for my personal growth. And I am super duper regretting that decision right now. For the whole last year, it was totally cool. This is great. You know, I had my own place to come back to, didn't have any roommates to worry about. I could leave as many dishes as I wanted in the sink. And now I would just kill to have my old roommate back, who I really thought talked too much, never gave me enough space, and wouldn't leave me alone. Like, I'd kill almost to have him back. I know that we're a church of nonviolence, but man, I'm desperate.
So, yeah, all of a sudden those things that were keeping us balanced are they're gone. So maybe that's why Bible study is a really good thing.
Yeah, I find that, that's why I tuned in. It's good to just be a part of the community. And last night, for the past 2 weeks, I've been doing my classes on Zoom, just like this. And, it's great that all the actors are still involved and are still studying, even though it's Zoom and you can't have that personal contact. But I find that after having a conference with people I know and trust and love, it really does make a difference. And so whether it's Bible study or acting, it's all good just to be with others.
Right.
Yeah, I was telling Anthony right before I got on this call that like I have to go to Bible study tonight because I need to be a part of something. And he's like, you were a part of something. You went to work today. Do you work from home? And I was like, no, I got to be something bigger. Like I have to be a part of this bigger picture out there. Like it can't just be me and my laptop alone.
Yeah. Yeah. My best friend is my laptop.
We had an interesting experience today. We do take a walk, and of course, we noticed that, people do say hi and what a nice day and so forth. But I saw our daughter coming down a green area with her little dog. And so I went out on the deck, and my neighbor on the other side of us was out on her deck. So we talked a little bit. And then the opposite direction, the neighbor was out on the deck as well. So we talked a little bit that way. And then this afternoon, the phone rang, and it was a longtime friend who lived in the community where we grew up in Iowa. And he's now living in California, but he was just reaching out to different friends and people. So that was a great experience.
And something that you might not have ever done on a normal weekday, right?
Right.
So are you going to be like the Italians and start singing from your balcony?
I don't think so.
I think that's the coolest thing, when like no one ever stands on their balcony, till they get cooped up. It's been amazing.
Right. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Very.
So Lyle and Vivian, I think I had you muted. Did you have anything you wanted to say?
Did we
Who,
have
me?
anything we wanted
No,
to say?
not really. Just listening along.
But Lyle's been walking around the block, and he said a lot of them are walking in the middle of the street.
Well, some are, and
Some are.
I've had people go by me today, a couple of them. So
Yeah.
none of them coughed on me or.
Yeah. So
I try to think of one or two, phone calls a day. Kind of what Donna, you were describing, getting a phone call from someone I haven't talked to for a long time, and just check in. I think that helps me some.
yeah,
The
that would,
the other day, we called an older lady who's 92 back in Illinois, and we talked maybe once a month or every 6 weeks. She's not a relative, but she was in our church, and said to her, "How is the cabin fever?" Well, cabin fever is there because she's used to getting out and doing things.
right.
But we thought, well, that's one way to show we're concerned about her.
Yeah, I bet she appreciates. So that's Larry and Donna at Peace Community Church. So we're welcome to the conversation. We're glad you could join along. For those who don't have a video, I'll just introduce you a little bit. They were my next door neighbors in Nigeria. So speaking of having community, you guys were the safety net for me for a lot of those weeks and months when I was living in Nigeria.
Thank goodness Gail was a nice, experienced, dedicated young lady. She caused no problems.
And,
Yeah.
and single.
Right.
Tomorrow, Colt Bible College is shutting down because of the virus.
Oh,
That's northeastern Nigeria.
wow. Right.
And you did hear that this whole state was put on stay-at-home orders tonight, didn't you?
For Colorado.
For Colorado.
Yes.
Say that again?
The governor just came on tonight on the news saying that the whole state of Colorado is on stay at home
At home?
starting tomorrow
Oh.
morning through the 17th of April, I believe,
Wow.
because we doubled the amount of people that got it from yesterday. Of course, because we got probably stuff back. We
And the
didn't have-
number died, made a big jump.
Oh, yeah.
So we're into the middle. I think Lyle says it's going to get worse each day.
Well, there are a lot of doctors saying that, and they're right. About Easter, it's going to be full blown, and sometime after Easter, it'll probably peak and then start down. That is what happened in both Italy and Spain. And we're going to be more like Spain and Italy, and not like Germany or South Korea.
Wow.
So,
We have a lot of reason to be in studying how we're going to survive through this and be there for each other.
Well, the bad thing is when it gets in the nursing homes, and in Spain they have the problem. Workers who are mostly older nurses, they run out of gloves, they run out of masks, they run out of any protective covering, and so all they can do basically is take a bath and go home. And they're finding people abandoned in the nursing homes.
Oh, no.
I think we'll have that.
Wow. So what do you think that we can offer in terms of scripture for one another, or in terms of offering another way of being brothers and sisters for each other that we don't necessarily have had to do before? What do we think that we can offer as Christians then?
Well, for most of us, we're pretty well homebound in the fact that we know if we catch it, we're going to die.
Right. So we need to be, one of the things we can do is to be seeing washing hands and staying home as an act of love, so that you're not part of that system that's going out on the beaches and going to spring break and doing all the partying. So we know that part of our response can be to think of others and not think about only about ourselves.
Well, I think as time goes on, we'll just need to be more and more, I mean, you can help people by dropping off supplies and all that kind of stuff, being willing to do that, and and encouraging people to say, they need something, uh, and it's all in our own neighborhoods, there first, and then our church, and other places. I know, food banks, for example, and I think they're doing stuff to make sure people kind of stay safe, but they need all kinds of help. That's just one example.
They need donations.
Donations, but also then workers, volunteers,
Oh,
and taking the proper precautions. But yeah, those kinds of things are as time goes on, will get more critical, I think.
I think so. I'm also wondering if we can figure out what we can do with these masks and how to help solve a crisis with mask and protection for the people who are on the front lines.
I think the nurses are going to have the ones that are made and approved as much as possible. They may use the others on top or somehow, but for regular people going around, masks, just for the person that has to get out to deliver stuff and things like that, they probably work.
Right. They're at least an option, maybe.
Uh-huh.
Well, the national church may have, connections, and then, that might be something to find out if that's something that could be offered, and give the proper instructions, kind of thing.
Right. And then Joanne's is what Elizabeth Ann was talking about, how to
Right.
to get the word out about. I think I can do some research on that. But
Yep.
it's also the stress and the depression and the loneliness. What do Christians have to say? We should be on the front lines of what we can do.
The dilemma is, if we try to do something and our neighbor doesn't appreciate it or want it, how do we walk that fine line? I know when we were talking to this lady back in Illinois, the 92-year-old, she said, well, there's one lady that doesn't want to be self-quarantined or anything, so she comes around to her door and she said, well, I kept my door shut. I wasn't about ready to open the door and let her in.
Right.
Right. One
Yeah.
of the
Well, I was just going to say, you got to set your own boundaries to, as far as health and not spreading it. And then, but I think we just need to make those phone calls. I mean, that's going to be the thing where, we can do. And if someone doesn't want to talk, that's fine. But, at least that's one way to
Right.
make connections.
Yeah,
Right.
you don't want to. Go ahead, Kathy.
Kathy, I found that very helpful last week when Ellen called me. I turned around and I called 2 other people
Right. Yeah.
that I don't talk to regularly just to see how they were doing. So, I mean, I think that, it made me think, well, who can I call?
Yeah.
I called 2 people.
Great. So that's the kind of virus we want to spread.
Right.
And I was going to say, you don't want to shame people into or guilt trip them, although those things work. And if you're feeling desperate, I suppose you could go for it. But, I think the idea too is, how do you help somebody understand how one person can make such a difference that can really harm people? One person can make such a difference that can really help people. But to not stay home, like Gail was saying, to wash your hands, to stay home, that's really the loving thing. It's framing it in a way that is, motivates people to feel good about what they're doing, as opposed to, oh my gosh, I have to stay home. And it's a grief and loss, depression kind of negative cycle of thinking that you get caught up in, as opposed to, I'm really helping out other people. I'm helping the community when I do this. So.
Right, totally shift that, your perspective to make it to seem like you're helping out the whole community. It can start this chain link that would help a lot of people by doing what you're doing, staying at home. What I've been doing is saying, would you mind if I connected with you once a week or so? And that gave them permission to say, oh, yes, or not really. And so I just frame it in that way so that people have the ability to say yes or no, I really would like to be connected or not. And if, people come to your door, it's always a good thing to say, oh, I can call you on my phone and talk, and rather than opening my door, let me just call you up on my phone and let that be your boundary to say, that's how I'm going to do the most loving thing, is to call you on the phone.
I had a birthday last week, and this was before most things were shutting down, but also we did a separation as far as the dinner that evening. And I had gotten some presents, some flowers from my grandkids. So yesterday I wrote them each a note, and my 21-year-old granddaughter had been in contact with a friend who got the virus. And so I thanked her for letting us know, and thanked her for staying home and for being careful around others. So I think we need to encourage others in that way too.
Oh, that's really excellent. Yeah, and it's hard if you're the one who has to be quarantined. It's a really hard thing to have to live through. And I think we need to offer that we want to hear from people if they have been quarantined or if they have been exposed, so that they won't have to feel like they're the outcast, maybe.
Right. And feel guilty.
Right.
Maybe you could put them on the prayer chain
Yeah, exactly.
at church if you know about it.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I'm willing to do this again next week. I'm thinking of these topics that come to the top of my head. I'm thinking of the topic, another way of living, which is kind of our Church the Brethren tagline. And then if people have suggestions of topics of things they would like to have this Bible study focus on, I'm very open to ideas. I'll just keep becoming until someone tells me not to. And I think it's a good thing to stay connected as long as we can be there for each other and care about one another. I was telling my deacons this morning that one of the prayers that I've been singing is an old grace that we learned in church camp, and it says, "For health and strength and daily food, we give thee thanks, O Lord." I used to think that was such a lame table grace, but now I'm thinking it's probably the most profound one I've ever heard. So we have health and strength, which we really have no control over, daily food, which we're not even sure we have any control over, and for all of these blessings that we've had taken for granted, that we can thank the Lord that we are able to sustain and to be in this community together. So blessings on your journey. And any last words from anyone?
Thank you, Gail.
Thank you, Gail.
You're
Oh,
welcome. All right. We'll see you in a week. Or
Okay.
Bye. Love you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.